Hello and welcome back to the final part of my illustration process. So in this final part, I'm starting to work on the sword design. The reason I take out the sword by itself is because I think it's easier for me to explore whatever I want to explore in a different file, because the other file already have like 30 layers. And at that stage, I wasn't too confident of combining them because I wasn't sure if I want to change any colors. But anyway, I just extracted the line work of the sword out of the illustration and then opened a new file and starting to add more details and experimenting with shapes. Of course, with some research on my side. And I was trying to work with this idea and you can see I didn't like that. So erased and trying something else. It just takes a while for me to always explore what I really want. And over here, the sword is probably still a little weird because the way the handle is. However, I think I really want to have this kind of curve in my illustration. So right now, I wouldn't say this is like a great example of a weapon design because you should probably work out how the hand hold this weapon and how it's supposed to be. But I think for my illustration, it's more of a, again, she's doing performance dance, right? So it's not a huge issue. Maybe it's just a prop sword. So anyway, it's more about the decorative patterns and finishing my illustration within the deadlines that I'm given. So here we go. Maybe next time when I do another sword, I should research a little more about how the curve should be facing. Maybe someone on the internet will tell me that this is totally incorrect and everything. Over here, I used the Bevel tool in Photoshop, the Bevel layer effects to give me some quick coloring ideas, and then I just merged the layer effects, and then I just used the brush tool together with smudging tool to render out the sword. The bevel layer effect is actually great whenever you are painting metal details, but I would use it when I have a painting instead of doing this kind of line work based artwork. It looks too different. It looks too 3D, and this kind of work is more hand drawn. But if I was painting, I would probably use the bevel tool for a lot of those decorative elements, and then probably just hand drawn on top of that to cover up the 3D-ness of the bevel tool. But it's great to save some time. And then I was trying to be smart where I put back the graphic and then I combined the two layers into a smart object. And then I double click on the smart object and trying to edit the file from the smart object instead of doing the graphic within the illustration. But I think eventually I give up because it wasn't working very well. Used to work pretty well. I'm not sure if it was a bug or I did something wrong. Basically, a smart object will remember its shape. So when you are transforming it, you can always reset it back to its original shape. And I use that a lot. For example, if you have a pattern and you convert it into a smart object, then it's much easier for you to place it in different perspective rather than changing the perspective and then the next time the transformation axis will become different. However, the smart objects takes up the file size a lot too, so again, use it with caution. So after combining the solid with my illustration, I start to clean up the final bits, just checking through here and there, adding little details whenever details are missing or there's something wrong, and fine-tuning everything. Over here, I'm using more of a airbrush kind of tool, so just having those subtle refinements. And then to finish it up, I added a overlay layer on top of the character layer so that I can play around with the colors a little more. I also added a gradient with a yellow to purple gradient, kind of like a rainbow color, but I turned down the opacity a lot so you can only see a little bit of color variation, but it's not overwhelming. And then I saved a new version, and then I merged all the layers of the character. And I also added a solid gray layer, and I went to filter and added noise so that it also gives a lot of grainy noise for the picture because I don't like the flat digital look. And then I made some adjustment with the levels. Always play around with levels and curves just so that you can see if it can give you any happy accidents or if there's a option that you didn't realize that you're missing because you've been looking at the picture for so long. Then I started to sketch out some tulips. I was playing around with the idea whether I wanted more natural looking tulips or I wanted more pattern looking tulips. And I think eventually I just decided to go with my trusty symmetry tool again. And then I just sketched out the graphical shapes of the tulips before doing the line work because they are a background element. And I didn't want any straight black lines on it. So I just wanted it to be, I just want the graphical shapes to work first. And then I used more of a darker purple instead of black lines to have more of a texture on the tulips rather than having a very strong line work, just so that it's very subtle in the background, but using similar lines. But I wanted the tulips over here to still read more tulip than the patterns. And personally, I think that worked well. Yeah, so just trying to still keep it graphical, but making it slightly more realistic. And over here, I'm still using the same brush. So basically that brush with no opacity, and that's just kind of my go-to brush for like everything. Even though I have like a million brush. Again, I didn't want any of the tulips to be distracting. I just wanted it to help the character, but also filling up some of that lower space so that it doesn't look too bare. I think my tutorial actually don't have a lot of really cool technique that I can show. It's basically this one brush and then you just see me drawing lines over and over. But that's kind of the life, I guess. It's just what it's like. People outside of our industry kind of ask questions like, does the computer draw things for you? And I feel like, no, you still have to move your hand a lot. I mean, as you can see that in this kind of illustration, the symmetry tool is like my best friend. So the computer does help me to draw and it does save me a lot of time. But still, in the end, I am a human sitting in front of a computer and moving my hand thousands and thousands of times. So there's just some stuff that you cannot really avoid, and you just have to spend a long time doing it. With that being said, thank you so much if you are still staying here with me. I know that it's kind of dry to see all the line work, but I think the purpose of showing this is really to try to show this process that like how time consuming and labor intensive that it really is. And I think that is the technique. The technique is patience. I think no matter what technique you ended up using, patience can always come in handy. Because patience is a virtue, you know? Anyway, this is the end of my video process, and here's the final illustration. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in the other videos.